If you ever loved the sound of Western music and the burning imagery of the Searchers, you might be shocked to learn that behind that legendary film lies a chain of tragedies almost too real to believe. Many of its stars died alone, in strange illnesses, or from sudden accidents, and those who survived carried wounds that never healed. Join us as we uncover the real lives behind the movie, and you'll be stunned by what they went through. Natalie Wood as Debbie Edwards. Natalie Wood was only 18 years old when she portrayed Debbie Edwards, the young girl kidnapped by Native Americans who became the symbol of both trauma and hope in The Searchers, 1956. But in real life, Natalie lived in a world far darker than anything on screen. She was born on July 20th, 1938 in San Francisco to a poor family of Russian immigrants. Her mother, Maria, was manipulative and fame-obsessed, forcing her daughter into acting at the age of 4, while her father, Nicholas, was an alcoholic prone to violence. Natalie's childhood was a long series of control, fear, and exploitation. She was pushed to mature too early and even endured abuse that her mother ignored in exchange for film opportunities. Out of that deep trauma, Natalie turned acting into her lifeline. She shone in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, and reached stardom with Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, which earned her an Oscar nomination and proved she was no longer just a child star. Yet fame came with fragility. Natalie constantly battled between her glamorous public image as a screen goddess and her private reality as a woman dominated by her mother and unfulfilled romances. On November 29, 1981, at just 43 years old, Natalie Wood was found drowned near Catalina Island. Police ruled it an accident, but bruises on her body, the mysterious screams heard that night, and the silence of her husband, actor Robert Wagner, turned her death into one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries. She was buried at Westwood Memorial Park. At the time of her death, Natalie's net worth was estimated at about $2.5 million, but the true cost of her fame was a stolen childhood and a life cut painfully short. John Wayne as Ethan Edwards. John Wayne was 49 years old when he played Ethan Edwards, the bitter ex-soldier torn between love and hatred in The Searchers, 1956. The role was not only the pinnacle of his career, but also a mirror of his real self. Through it, Wayne embodied the perfect image of the American hero, majestic yet dark, powerful yet deeply human. John Wayne was born on May 26, 1907, in Winterset, Iowa, into a poor family plagued by hardship. His father, Clyde Morrison, suffered from lung disease, while his mother, Mary Alberta, was critical and domineering, creating constant tension at home. When Wayne was 10, the family moved to California in search of a warmer climate, but their attempt at farming failed, plunging them further into poverty. Young Wayne worked from an early age, selling goods, doing manual labor to help support his parents. Those difficult years forged his iron will, and in the midst of deprivation, he found his escape in cinema. Rejected many times, he persisted, taking on small, uncredited roles until he was finally cast in The Big Trail, 1930. The film flopped, but Wayne refused to give up. Nearly a decade later, Stagecoach, 1939, directed by John Ford, turned him into a star. The emotional scars of his childhood would later shape every character he portrayed, but fame came at a heavy price. In 1964, Wayne was diagnosed with lung cancer and had to have 1 lung and 4 ribs removed. Even then, he continued to work, embodying the indomitable Duke spirit to the very end. John Wayne passed away on June 11, 1979 in Los Angeles, at the age of 72 after his stomach cancer returned. He was laid to rest at Pacific View Memorial Park under a headstone engraved with the Spanish words Feo, Fuerte y Formal, ugly, strong, and dignified. At the time of his death, his fortune was estimated at around $7 million, but John Wayne's true legacy was never in money. It was in the immortal image of the Western hero he left behind. Ward Bond as Reverend Captain Samuel Johnston Clayton. Ward Bond was 53 years old when he portrayed Reverend Captain Samuel Johnston Clayton, the loyal friend of Ethan Edwards in The Searchers, 1956. As a soldier with both compassion and sternness, his presence added depth and emotion to the violent, guilt-ridden world John Ford so powerfully created. Ward Bond was born on April 9, 1903, in Benkelman, Nebraska, into a working-class family. His father owned a small lumber mill, and in 1919 the family moved to Denver, Colorado, in search of better opportunities. Bond's childhood was filled with the sound of saws and the smell of pine resin, a disciplined, self-reliant environment that shaped him into the tough, rugged man audiences would later see on screen. That foundation of athleticism and discipline led Bond naturally to film, beginning with Salute, 1929, a football movie directed by John Ford. Over time, he became one of the most recognizable faces in American cinema, appearing in more than 200 films, often as soldiers, policemen, or cowboys, embodying the archetype of the true American man. His notable roles in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, and The Searchers, 1956, showcased his range and emotional power. On November 5, 1960, Ward Bond died suddenly of a heart attack in Dallas at age 57. His death shocked Hollywood. Just hours earlier, he had planned to attend a football game at the Cotton Bowl. John Wayne, his lifelong friend, delivered his eulogy and inherited the revolver that had once accidentally shot Bond during a hunting trip. At the time of his death, Ward Bond's net worth was estimated at around $500,000. He is remembered not for wealth, but as one of the defining souls of the classic Western world. Carey Jr. as Brad Jorgensen. Carey Jr. was 35 years old when he played Brad Jorgensen, the young, impulsive lover who dared to face danger in search of the woman he loved. In The Searchers, 1956. Though a supporting role, Carey Jr. brought sincerity, passion, and the youthful innocence that gave emotional depth to the Western's tragic grandeur. Carey Jr. was born on May 16, 1921 in Saugus, California, the son of legendary actors Harry Carey Sr. and Olive Carey. One might assume that growing up in Hollywood was a dream, but his childhood was filled with pain. His father, a celebrated screen icon, was an alcoholic with a fierce temper, turning their home into a battleground. Every meal, every word could spark confrontation. The young Carey Jr. learned early that love could hurt, and fame could be a chain. He grew up isolated, living in the enormous shadow of his father. That loneliness became both his wound and his fuel, driving him toward acting. Carey Jr. longed to be recognized not as Harry Carey's son, but as a true artist in his own right. He threw himself into small roles, accepting every fall and bruise for the sake of his craft. Red River, 1948, marked his first chance to stand alongside John Wayne and Howard Hawks. For years, alcohol became his only companion, helping him forget his sorrow, yet slowly pulling him deeper into despair. Carey Jr. passed away on December 27, 2012, in Santa Barbara, at the age of 91, of natural causes. He was cremated, and his ashes rest at Westwood Village Memorial Park. At the time of his death, his fortune was estimated at around $2 million, a modest sum, but the artistic legacy he left behind was priceless. Carey Jr. was the last surviving member of the John Ford Stock Company, the final bridge between old Hollywood and the modern film world. Jeffrey Hunter as Martin Pauly. When Jeffrey Hunter starred in The Searchers, 1956, he was just 30 years old, playing Martin Pauly, the young man of mixed white and Native American heritage who accompanies Ethan Edwards on the mission to rescue his kidnapped niece. Martin embodied loyalty and humanity, standing in moral contrast to Ethan's blind hatred. Through this role, Hunter delivered the most memorable performance of his short-lived career. Jeffrey Hunter was born Henry Herman McKinney's Jr. on November 25, 1926, in New Orleans, Louisiana. His early years were spent moving frequently because of his father's job as an insurance agent, until the family finally settled in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The constant uprooting made him introspective and reserved, traits that deepened the emotional layers seen in his later acting. He went on to study at Northwestern University, graduating in 1949, before earning a master's degree in radio at UCLA. There he was discovered and signed by 20th Century Fox. Hunter began with a small part in 14 Hours, 1951, and gradually rose to prominence, achieving his greatest acclaim with The Searchers, 1956. But his promising career was soon derailed by personal instability and professional setbacks. Struggling with health problems and emotional strain, he withdrew from major roles, and his later years were marked by B-movies and failed projects. On May 27, 1969, Jeffrey Hunter died at the age of 42 after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage caused by a fall in his Van Nuys, California home, a head injury possibly linked to a previous onset accident in Spain. He was laid to rest at Glen Haven Memorial Park in Sylmar. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at about $1 million, modest compared to the talent and promise he once possessed. Ken Curtis as Charlie McCory. In The Searchers, 1956, Ken Curtis was 40 years old when he played Charlie McCory, the humorous, romantic, and loyal cowboy. Though a minor character, he brought a sense of humanity and warmth that softened the film's otherwise heavy, violent tone. Curtis proved that even supporting roles could hold extraordinary charm. Ken Curtis was born on July 2, 1916, in Lamar, Colorado, to a poor farming family. As a boy, he often watched his father, a stern sheriff, arrest acquaintances, even close friends. At night, the howling wind outside the plains mixed with the clinking of bottles and the sound of arguments inside their small home. He grew up learning to smile, to hide his fear. Music became his only refuge. With a deep, warm voice, Curtis joined the band Sons of the Pioneers and eventually found his way into Hollywood. Yet the spotlight could not erase the darkness within him. For years, Curtis wrestled with the loneliness that often accompanied fame, the applause by day and sleepless nights by silence. He once said, "I learned to sing so I wouldn't have to talk, and to smile so no one would know I was hurting." Still, his love for film kept him grounded, and he went on to become a beloved face on Gunsmoke, remembered for his simplicity and kindness. Ken Curtis died on April 28, 1991, in Fresno, California, at the age of 74, from a heart attack in his sleep. His ashes were scattered across the plains of Colorado, the land of his childhood and the place where he first dreamed of the stage. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $5 million, largely from music and television. Ken Curtis left behind the image of a humble, multi-talented artist with a deeply human heart. John Qualen as Lars Jorgensen. In The Searchers, 1956, John Qualen played Lars Jorgensen, at the age of 57. Though his role was small, it carried special meaning because it reflected the essence of the man himself. John Qualen was born on December 8, 1899 in Vancouver, Canada, to a poor Norwegian immigrant family. His father was a strict Lutheran minister who viewed emotion as a sin. From a young age, John grew up surrounded by sermons of faith and sacrifice, but inside he was a lonely child yearning for a word of affection. His heavy Scandinavian accent made him the target of mockery, and even as an adult, that same accent became a chain that confined him to minor roles: servants, immigrants, ordinary men. From small, struggling theater troupes, Qualen worked his way to Broadway and eventually to Hollywood. His performance as Muley in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, moved director John Ford to tears. Yet success could not erase his sadness. He lived simply, always feeling like an outsider in a noisy world. John Qualen died on September 12, 1987, in Torrance, California, at the age of 87, from heart failure. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at about $1 million, modest compared to the hundreds of roles he had played. But to those who had seen The Grapes of Wrath or The Searchers, he was never just a supporting actor. John Qualen was the soul of the humble, the man who brought to Hollywood something money could never buy: genuine humanity. Henry Brandon as Chief Scar. At 44 years old, Henry Brandon took on the role of Chief Scar, the vengeful Native American leader filled with hatred toward white settlers in The Searchers, 1956. His chilling performance terrified audiences but also evoked a quiet sorrow. Brandon acted through the loneliness of his own life. With eyes both cold and haunted, he transformed the villain into a symbol of pain, of those society had pushed beyond the boundaries of humanity. Henry Brandon was born on June 8, 1912, in Berlin, Germany, under the name Heinrich von Kleinbach. When he was still a child, his family emigrated to the United States. Growing up in a foreign land, Brandon always felt he belonged nowhere. A German in wartime America and a gay man in the hypocrisy of old Hollywood. He hid his true self, masking his real affections behind polite smiles, living in fear and secrecy for decades. Those long, solitary years eroded his spirit, leaving a man who wore a mask both on and off screen. That inner distance made Brandon a chameleon, able to disappear into hundreds of characters, from the villain in Babes in Toyland, 1934, to Chief Scar in The Searchers, 1956. The deeper he immersed himself in his roles, the further he drifted from his real identity. People praised his talent, but few knew that each performance was, in truth, an act of self-concealment. By middle age, the line between acting and reality had blurred completely, leaving only long, silent nights in his West Hollywood apartment. Henry Brandon passed away on February 15, 1990, in Los Angeles at the age of 77 from a heart attack. His body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in an unnamed theater. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $1 million. But what he truly left behind was not money, but the legacy of an artist who lived his entire life in the shadows. Olive Carey as Mrs. Jorgensen. When Olive Carey joined The Searchers in 1956, she was 60 years old, portraying Mrs. Jorgensen, a kind, resilient, and compassionate mother living in the harsh frontier. The role carried deeper meaning than most realized. It wasn't just the image of a Western woman, but a reflection of Olive herself. Olive Fuller Golden was born on January 31, 1896, in New York, into a family of theater performers. Her father, George Fuller Golden, was a famous vaudeville comedian, but when Olive was just 16, he died, leaving her mother and 4 children penniless. From that moment, the young girl was forced to become self-reliant, performing to support her family. Early hardship taught Olive both the cruelty of the stage and the fragility of happiness. In 1916, she met Western actor Carey Jr. and married him, believing she had found safety at last, only to discover years filled with heartbreak. Behind the image of a great actor's wife was a woman enduring loneliness and betrayal. Carey Sr. was unfaithful, drank heavily, and often abandoned his wife and children on their vast ranch. Olive swallowed her pain, caring for her children and managing the household alone. When the St. Francis Dam collapsed in 1928, destroying their property, she nearly lost everything, her home and her faith. Yet instead of breaking, Olive returned to acting, determined to keep living and working. After her husband's death in 1947, she poured all her love and sorrow into her role in The Searchers. Olive Carey passed away on March 13, 1988, in Carpinteria, California, at the age of 92. She died peacefully, leaving behind her son, Carey Jr., to continue the family's cinematic legacy. Her net worth was estimated at around $500,000, modest compared to her 50 years of dedication, but her true worth lay in her resilience and her lifelong devotion to art. Hank Worden as Mose Harper. When Hank Worden appeared in The Searchers, 1956, he was 55 years old and played Mose Harper, the eccentric, lonely old cowboy whose only wish was a home and a rocking chair by the fire. Though the role was written for comic relief, it carried deep tragedy, because behind Mose's vacant eyes was a lifetime of neglect, just like Hank Worden's own life. Born Norton Earl Worden on July 23, 1901 in Rolfe, Iowa, he was raised on a cattle ranch in Montana. From childhood, he knew the chill of the wind, the saddle beneath him, and the silence of the open plains. He once dreamed of becoming a pilot but failed the selection exam, so he turned to rodeo riding instead, where he once broke his neck in a fall without realizing it. Lonely and penniless, Hank wandered from job to job, driving taxis in New York, sleeping in stables, always dreaming of a home he never had. His chance at acting came by accident when he met actress Billie Burke, and from then on, he poured every hardship he had endured into his performances. In Stagecoach, 1939, he was just a background writer, but director John Ford saw in him a gentle, soulful quality that few possessed. Ford and John Wayne soon brought him into their Ford Stock Company, where Worden appeared in more than 10 films, from The Searchers to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Though he was often cast in small roles, audiences remembered his shy smile, faraway gaze, and trembling voice that carried the sound of prairie winds. In his simplicity and sincerity, Hank became an inseparable part of the Western spirit. Hank Worden passed away on December 6, 1992, in Los Angeles, at the age of 91, from natural causes. He left this world as quietly as he had lived. His net worth was estimated at about $500,000, earned mostly from his supporting roles and television appearances. To audiences, Hank wasn't just Mose Harper. He was the embodiment of every lonely soul who still managed to smile through the dust of life. Antonio Moreno as Emilio Figueroa. At 69 years old, Antonio Moreno played Emilio Figueroa, a small but dignified role symbolizing the fading of an entire generation in The Searchers, 1956. With his weary voice and sorrowful gaze, Moreno wasn't just acting. He seemed to be bidding farewell to his own career. Antonio Garrido Monteagudo was born on September 26, 1887, in Madrid, Spain, to a middle-class family. At 14, he emigrated to the United States with his parents, chasing the dream of a better life. By 1912, he had entered silent cinema, and within a few years he became Hollywood's first Latin heartthrob, even before Rudolph Valentino. Known as the man who made the world tremble, he starred opposite screen legends like Pola Negri, Clara Bow, and Greta Garbo. But that glory was short-lived. When sound films arrived, his thick Spanish accent caused the studios to turn their backs on him. Moreno was later embroiled in a major scandal with an American actress, an affair that made tabloid headlines and led producers to sever his contracts. In the years that followed, he lived reclusively, drifting between Mexico and Hollywood, directing and acting in B-movies just to survive. Despite the humiliation, Moreno never lost his dignity as an artist. He refused to beg, refused to bow, and continued to work quietly until he could work no more. Antonio Moreno passed away on February 15, 1967, at the age of 79 of natural causes. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, the resting place of many Hollywood legends. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at about $1 million, but his true value could never be measured in money. Walter Coy as Aaron Edwards. When Walter Coy joined The Searchers in 1956, he was 47 years old and played Aaron Edwards, the older brother of Ethan, John Wayne, a man symbolizing family devotion and loyalty amid the harshness of the frontier. Though he appeared only in the early part of the film, his character provided the emotional spark that set the entire tragedy in motion. And in Coy's performance, one could sense a quiet sadness, as if he were acting out his own life. Walter Coy was born on January 31st, 1909, in Great Falls, Montana. His father owned a furniture store, and his mother was quiet and reserved. When Walter was still a child, the family moved to Seattle, but warmth never seemed to follow them. He grew up feeling misplaced, a small-town boy with big dreams of acting, restrained by poverty. He worked in salmon canneries in Alaska, enduring hunger and freezing nights, just to save enough money to study drama. Those early struggles shaped his determination, but left a lingering loneliness that never truly faded. When his career finally began to rise, Walter fell into the spiral of alcohol and gambling. Once a talented stage actor on Broadway, he lost his voice, his opportunities, and eventually his family to addiction. His portrayal of Aaron Edwards in The Searchers felt eerily fitting, a good man caught between strength and sorrow. After the film, he regained brief recognition through radio work and guest appearances on Gunsmoke, but his dependence on alcohol continued to erode his health. Walter Coy passed away on December 11, 1974 in California at age 65 from heart failure, the final toll of years of exhaustion and drink. He was buried quietly without fanfare. His estate was valued at around $500,000, but among fans of the Western genre, he is still remembered as the man whose face carried the sadness of an entire era. Dorothy Jordan as Martha Edwards. Dorothy Jordan was 50 years old when she portrayed Martha Edwards, the gentle wife, devoted mother, and woman who carried an unspoken love for Ethan, John Wayne, in The Searchers, 1956. Though her screen time was brief, her performance lingered in the audience's memory. The pained look as she watched her husband ride away to war, the silent touch of her hand that spoke 1,000 unspoken words. It wasn't just a role, it was Dorothy's own heart on screen. Dorothy was born on August 9, 1906, in Clarksville, Tennessee, into a poor family. From a young age, she knew what it meant to go without, to smile through hardship. When her father died early, Dorothy supported her education by performing in small local theaters. Beneath those dim stage lights, the young woman found her escape. From humble performances, she rose to Broadway and eventually to Hollywood. But success was also the beginning of tragedy. At the height of her career, Dorothy met filmmaker Merian C. Cooper, the creator of King Kong, 1933. They fell deeply in love, married, and Dorothy left Hollywood to become a wife and mother. For her, love was a refuge. For the world, it was a disappearance without farewell. For 20 years, she lived quietly in the shadow of her husband, watching him succeed while she was forgotten. When she returned to the screen in The Searchers, 1956, she was no longer the bright young star, but a woman who had known sacrifice and loss. That is why Martha Edwards' gaze in the film carried such profound sadness. It was real. Dorothy Jordan passed away on December 7, 1988, in Los Angeles at the age of 82 from heart failure. Her body was cremated and her ashes were scattered at sea, just as she once said, "Only the waves never hold anyone back." At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $500,000. Yet to her fans, Dorothy Jordan remains forever the symbol of quiet, sorrowful beauty. Those faces may have faded, but their presence in The Searchers endures through time. Each story is a somber note in Hollywood's great symphony, tragic yet immortal. Which of them do you remember most? And whose fate shocked you the deepest? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to uncover more untold secrets of cinema's greatest legends.